Trustee Rita not here, and Trustee Stecker. President Julia?
Here, and we knew Celeste was not able to attend tonight, and Nick is on his way. Are there any presentations?
No, there are none.
No. Item number 5, public comments and questions to give as many visitors as possible an opportunity to speak in the interest of adjourning by 9 p.m. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes in length unless further time granted by the board on active or general matters that we may be able to answer. Please introduce yourself to our clerk and fire away.
Good evening. My name is Gina Chandler, Chandler, 10910 Robin Hood Street. As you all know by now, I'm here tonight to speak on the behalf of the concerned citizens of Westchester in defense of our beautiful Mayfair Park. I'm aware that according to tonight's agenda, item 7C, you will be voting individually on whether or not the village should move forward with litigation regarding the proposed tower. And I want to implore you to uphold your initial ruling, to stand behind the ZBA's and the Plan Commission's decisions to deny Verizon and SBA the special use permit required to lease the land from the Park District. A lot has been said at prior meetings regarding this issue, and I'm not here to reiterate any of the reasons why we don't want a tower in Mayfair Park. Rather, I would like to underscore a few important points that might change your opinions and make you see that we still do have a fighting chance against Verizon in a court of law. Foremost, at a meeting in December, I believe, and you would have to check the minutes, I'm not 100% positive on the date, there were so many meetings. My husband, Tim Chandler, brought up the valid point that the grounds for a special use permit necessitate that such a permit, quote, complement the area in which the fixture would be built. In no way does the tower serve as a complement to the park. Dolan Realty on that same night was unable to provide an explanation for this provision either. They simply stated that it would be a light pole, which it already is. That is one legal, unemotional reason that a competent lawyer such as ours could use to defend our denial of said permit. Additionally, Dolan Realty provided no technological reason that the provided alternative small cell technology wouldn't work. They simply said it was not an option. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm certain that there must be some way to argue that this goes against the contingency in the Park District contract. Ultimately, I recognize that $70,000 is a lot of money, and I would hate to see the village lose that sum of money in a lost lawsuit. But a few parting thoughts. One, it's a dangerous precedent to set when one backs down. For the 34 years that I have lived in this town, we have not been a town that backs down when challenged, even in light of a lawsuit. Two, the Park District signed this contract. They have earned money since the contract was signed. In fact, upon FOIA-ing the Park District emails with Dolan, it was clear that Verizon did not deem this site as necessary in the first place. If you haven't FOIA'd the Park District for those emails, I recommend you do so. They were really enlightening, and they might be helpful in the forthcoming case. As such, if the issue is monetary, why should the Park District be off the hook for paying the lawsuit? Let them chip in to ease the financial burden. After all, this whole mess is their fault. I repeat, we do not want this tower. We don't need this tower. I sincerely hope that you will stand behind your prior decisions, that you will be aboard of your word, and that you will vote to go forth with litigation to protect our park. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Trustee Stecker has arrived. Any other public comments before we move on to our regular agenda? Once, twice?
Carl Santucci, 2929 Beckett. Regarding a cell phone tower, we were just interested in the type of contract that they originally signed. I had heard it was a contingent contract. Now, does that mean that it was based on getting a special use permit? Or what was the contingency?
Can we call Mike?
That was not a contract with the village, that was a contract that the Park District entered into. We're not privy to all the details of that contract.
Okay.
It's a lease agreement.
So, let's see. Sorry, I was a little bit late. I mean, I would have been better prepared, but are we going to go to the August 25th meeting with the federal magistrate anyway and see what they
Yes,
say?
we are.
Okay. And then the only other thing I had was apparently then the Park District can enter into contracts on any subject that they want to get in on without talking to you guys first?
The Park District is a separate unit of government. We have no control over their policies.
But they would have to come to us, just like you would if there was some kind of variance or things of that nature that didn't conform to the rules that are in place.
Okay. I guess I'm out of time, right? Let's see. I was just wondering if there shouldn't be some type of thought given to why the Park District is allowed to just operate separately from the rest of the board and zoning commission and all that. It's always been like that?
It's
or-
pretty much the state statute once
Or the state?
once there was a delineation of responsibility that the park has elected members, it takes it out of our bailiwick. Same with the library board, same with the school district.
Okay. All right, well, thank you.
Regina Bartzis, Bartzis, 2909 Beckett. I'm having a difficult time understanding how the Park District can go into a contract with a company without, as you said, if it's a separate entity, without presenting it first to the residents of Westchester who are going to be affected by this. So in my mind, I'm thinking if they wanted to put a stripper pole up in Mayfair Park and offer stripping classes or pole classes, that we could do that. They could do that, and nobody could say, no, we're not supposed to do that, even though it would be detrimental to our community. I just have a hard time thinking that they would put the lives and the health of the residents who put them in office or who are going to pay part of whatever salary they get, or if they don't get a salary, but they're part of the community, and they don't think enough of the community and the health and welfare of our residents to think about this cell tower. It just seems a little fishy that they keep pushing and pushing and pushing this, and residents have said, we've been at so many meetings, and residents have said, we do not want this, and they keep presenting it and presenting it and presenting it. It's almost like we're trying to paint a dead horse and say, it's a pinto, or it's alive. We've told everyone that we are against this, and yet they keep bringing it up and resurrecting it. I just think that that's very, very sad for our community.
Well, the comment on your first commentary, what you've indicated would be an adult use. In our zoning code, there's a certain percentage of town that has to be set aside for adult use. That Park District is not an area of adult use, so obviously that wouldn't fly. The Park District, like the village, we're mandated to put our agenda items on 48 hours in advance. I guess I want to say, unfortunately, sometimes those items get missed by the public as they're not looking for them, and then the topic gets discussed. Like in our case, we discuss everything a minimum of twice. At a committee of the whole first, where there's more discussion, and then at our board meeting, which would be the following meeting, to vote on something. There are times when things get waived that creep up, that have some timelines that we may not have had discussion items on in between the two meetings, which takes a supermajority of the board even to consider. And I would imagine the Park District falls under those rules. I think everybody on this board understands the topic and your frustration in regards to that, and hopefully those frustrations are centered in the right direction, which would be, like Ms. Chandler said, toward the Park District. There's 5 members of that, as I understand it. One member, their president, voted no. There was a vacancy, and 3 other persons voted in a positive regard, and the lease agreement apparently was signed, which started a discussion with us. So we're at where we are right now. The board is going to deal with this. I've asked that it be placed on the agenda for a vote and at least some direction for August 25th of what we're prepared or not prepared to do before the federal magistrate. And we have a couple of weeks before that happens, and we'll go from there. So.
Hi, good evening. My name is Amanda Grant. I'm at 1356 Hydorn Avenue. As I understand it, you're entering into arbitration, and I don't know how much give and take there would be with Verizon and the company, but just food for thought, putting this out there. If they're looking at South Westchester, Salt Creek Woods, owned by the Forest Preserves of Cook County, is within 1 mile directly to the south of Mayfair. Possum Hollow Woods is exactly 1 mile to the east. I don't know if they would be open to maybe moving the site of the tower, and then the Park District could get out the lease. I'm not an expert at all in the arbitration process, but that's something to put out there to think about.
The Forest Preserve District has indicated that that's not part of their mission to have anything built in there.
And in those
in their
particular
ground.
locations, because the Cook County Board of Commissioners did within this past year decide that they would start examining the use of having things like cell towers and those like giant billboards by the highway and stuff. The Forest Preserve does own a lot of property that, I mean, Possum Hollow Woods and Salt Creek are obviously very nice places, but they are very, very close to where the proposed site is. And I do work for the Forest Preserves, disclaimer, and I did check on this. This is something that the Cook County Board of Commissioners, which oversees the Forest Preserves, has okayed. So I don't know if this would be worth it to look into that or to talk to Verizon, but moving the tower 1 mile south or 1 mile east, if the Forest Preserve had okayed those sites for cell phone or cell tower use, it could be something to look into, and then everyone would win. Okay?
Thank you.
Just one correction, it's not an arbitration. The conference is with a federal magistrate judge for the Northern District of Illinois Federal Court. So it's not an arbitration.
Anyone else? Going once, twice, 3 times. Okay, we will move on then to our consent agenda. We have items A through D. Item A, approval of record of bills ending 8/4/16 in the amount not to exceed $818,133.06. Approval of the minutes of July 26th for the board, 26/16 the committee of the whole, and 26/2016 the executive session. Approval of department reports, community development, police, fire, public works, and an ordinance amending chapter 5.36 entitled Liquor Sales of Title V, entitled Business Licenses and Regulations of the Westchester Municipal Code. Does anybody need anything pulled? Not hearing anything, is there a motion and a second to approve our consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Nick and Frank. Any discussion? If not, Jessica, please the roll.
Trustee Stecker?
Aye.
Trustee Perry?
Aye.
Trustee Pelletier?
Aye.
Trustee Salzburger?
Aye.
Trustee Yurgis?
Aye.
President Julia?
Aye, motion carries. In the active agenda, we have item A, an ordinance providing for the submission to the electors of the Village of Westchester, Cook County, Illinois, at the general election to be held on November 8th, 2016, a public question as to whether the property tax extension limitation which is noted as the PTEL of the village to be increased.
Mr. President, item B is also related intricately with item A, and I would ask for your permission to have the board discuss both of those items, even though you only may have a motion on one of those items to approve, just for the purposes of discussion. So you're only going to choose between A or B. You can't pass both. So there's nothing to preclude you from passing both, but that's not the intent of the corporate authorities.
Okay, so let me read B as well, and then we'll take a motion on both of them, and hopefully we'll have the same people do the motions. An ordinance providing for the submission to the electors of the Village of Westchester, Cook County, Illinois, at the general election to be held November 8th, 2016, a public question as to whether the limiting rate under the property tax extension limitation law for the village be increased. Is there a motion and a second for A?
So moved.
Carl, and the second?
Second.
I'll give it to Tommy. Okay.
Just trying to be cordial.
Okay, and then
That's
since
sufficient. We don't need another
say-
motion,
okay.
just so that you can discuss both of them together, because Zoran's going to discuss both of them.
Okay, well, as Zorn to step forward, there's a motion for the initial discussion, and you can explain these.
Good evening, President Trustees. My name is Zoran Milutinovic. I'm Vice President with Kane McKenna Capital. Before you, you have the two ordinances that provide for the ability for the village to put a referendum out to increase the property tax levy. The statute provides basically for two options. There are advantages and disadvantages of both options, and I think the discussion that we were hoping to have here with you is for some of your input on the comfort level that the authorities here have with respect to each of them. The first one that's on A is the property tax extension limitation increase. On that one, I believe, Janet, was any of this handed out, or should I hand it out?
Yes, it was.
That one's highlighted in green?
There's one entitled Preliminary Property Tax Extension Limitation Increase Analysis.
Item A that's been handed out is the green highlighted one, as Janet said, for the board members. And B is the orange, it looks like.
The two options, one of the options allows the village to ask for an increase to its extension itself, meaning what was levied this year, approximately, you'll see the 2015 extension is $6,256,078. The property tax extension limitation law allows you to ask for a percentage increase to that amount versus an actual increase to the tax rate itself, which is the second option. With respect to this option, this is a bottom line request that whatever the county extends for your property taxes in 2016 would be increased by 16%. And in our analysis here, it would generate approximately $1 million of additional property tax levy. Because of the rounding amount, it's $1,972,000.
And Zoran, if I can just interject, that's what's commonly understood as the tax cap, the lesser of the cost of living increase or 5%.
Correct.
That's that cap.
Yeah, as you see in the ordinance itself, the question to the voters is, are you willing to authorize the increase over the lesser of the CPI or 5%? And in this case, this would override that lower limitation that's in the statute.
So it would guarantee a 16% increase in the tax levy from the prior year. And then does that have a continuing effect or impact on that tax cap?
You know, at that point, then, it would grow like the rest of the village's property tax extension. It would grow at the CPI, the lower of the CPI, or 5%. You know, the past few years, it's been significantly lower than the 5%. So it's a one-time bump, and then it ends up being increased by much like the rest of your levy is each year.
But that one-time bump is then the base for that year that's applied to the next following
That's
year. So it
correct.
doesn't really go away.
That's correct.
Okay.
So if the extension then for 2016 is $7,257,000, that would be your new base, and your growth would be based off of that amount. The second on in B, there's also another analysis here for you, and I'll go through the advantages and disadvantages after we discuss the two options. This actually increases the tax rate that the village that was ultimately imposed. This year, the tax rate is 1.438%. What we've done is we've basically, based on this year's equalized assessed valuation, calculated out how much of an increase to that 1.438 the village would need to implement in order to get the additional $1 million. Again, that amount, like the other one, whatever additional increase would grow with the lesser of the CPI or 5%. It's the same way. It's just two different methodologies of calculating the increase. Now, the advantages and disadvantages. I'll go back to the property tax extension limitation increase. If you look at the question on the ballot basically asks for a 16% increase without any type of description with respect to how the monies are going to be used. I know the village has identified intends to use it for specific purposes. That can't be part of the ballot. There is one other item that's shown below that, which breaks out what the increase in taxes are per $100,000 value of a residence. That's the issue with that one, but it does guarantee whatever the equalized assessed value is next year, whether it drops or goes up, you're guaranteed the extra $1 million. With the tax rate increase, it's a little bit of a different situation, and it's somewhat more unique to Cook County. What you're asking for is a specific rate increase. The danger there, the downside, is that you actually could see another drop in your equalized assessed value, which means that you would end up, even though you ask for that rate, and we're making the assumption based on this that it's $1 million based at this level, if the EAV drops, you're going to get commensurately less percentage-wise as the EAV drops. So that's the downside of that methodology. The advantage of that, though, is you do have much more in the referendum question itself. It's written differently. It's an actual request for a rate increase. It shows what the old rate was and what the new rate is, and it describes what the purposes of the additional revenues. Also, then, there's three additional information that's put below the referendum that gives additional information as far as what the impacts are. One of them being the house value, the other one what the actual amount of increase is to the property tax extension levy. The benefit of that is there's more information. A voter that walks into the voting booth that isn't that well informed beforehand will have some idea of what the purpose is of that levy. And in the other situation where you just have the increase, they don't have that. I think that one of the things that the village is going to have to look at is how much information can it get out there to how many people it can get out there to basically explain what the request is and why the amount is what it is. You are coming up against a general election. You're going to have many more voters probably coming out for this election. So, it's going to require a little bit more effort in trying to tell the story with respect to that. One of the questions I think, and we had some discussion with this with Chapman and Cutler and ourselves internally with respect to which of the two referendums have a better chance of passing. The referendum with the PTEL extension on the 16% In this case, many of the other local governments that try to ask for that increase, usually it's a much higher amount. You know, the percentage is higher, and that has a tendency to scare people off when you start asking 30 or 40% increases. The 16% increase isn't as difficult to overcome, but again, without the story behind it in the referendum question, it ends up being a little bit more of an issue. But again, on the other side, though, you have that disadvantage of how do you overcome the decrease in the property tax levy, in the property tax equalized assessed value. We did do an additional analysis that shows for each 1% drop in the equalized assessed value, that equates to about a $9,400 loss in actual property tax extension. So the one way that you could overcome that loss is to actually ask for a little bit larger increase than the $1 million to offset what potentially could be a loss in the future. The EAV this past year dropped about 3.5%.
And Soren, I have provided the board, I have a copy if you'd like to see it, the referendum that was, the question that was posed by the Westchester School District, 92.5 last year. They were successful in passing this for improvements to the school building. And that was, did have the information on what it was going to be used for, so just for reference purposes.
Yeah, and I wanted to add that my office had a conversation on Friday with the county clerk's tax extension division, the person in charge of that, with regard to these features and the negative impact with regard to the lowering of the EAV on the limiting rate one. And the clerk's office indicated that the last 3 referenda that they had administered were limiting rate referenda, and the EAV dropped, so those taxing districts weren't getting what they thought they were going to get based on they were locked into the tax rate, and tax rate times EAV equals, your tax, and if the EAV is lowered, you're going to get a smaller number. So she wanted to point that out, but you've got advantages and disadvantages with both. So
What I like about it is that, we've talked on this board about increasing the fire service officers to man a second ambulance, which, based on the study we paid for, is needed. And we've also talked about getting the police department back in some semblance of numbers based on 38 down to now 29 now. So we looked at the hiring of 3 and 3 to balance it out. I think it's an easier sell to people when you explain to them exactly what you're doing for the money or the request, and what public safety initiatives that we can improve on, and certainly the improving of the fire service transportation piece and service for ambulatory care, et cetera, that we could use the people. When I was part of the referendum piece for the school district prior to this one here, we had a rate in there and it failed because the people felt the rate was too high. We lowered it for the next time around and it passed. So I want to caution everybody to how we put the numbers out there are the perception that's out there. When you look based in December, when we say we're asking for 5% or up to whatever the CPI is, whichever is lower, in some of those ads that are written where you see it's 105% increase over last year, people don't understand that it's really 5% and not 105. And I remember getting questions constantly that you're raising my tax rate 105% based on the legal ad that was out there that had to be presented in that fashion versus an up to 5% increase. So the electorate, although they're fairly intelligent when these things, when you look at the shock value of the numbers on the paper, that could dictate the answer that you're going to receive. So I prefer the talking about the police and fire in the municipal one under B. If you think that the number could be bumped up slightly to accommodate a slightly less EAV, I mean, that's something that we could discuss. But is there anyone that prefers A to B or B to A, or did I make some kind of representation that made some sense? Frankie?
I agree with you. B. I'm in favor of going with B. And I think we should go for a higher rate, because I'd rather not be caught with our pants down.
Okay.
I concur.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, I'm definitely in favor. I like the fact that we can actually spell out what we're asking for, but I do, and we've had these discussions the last couple of days, is I'm just worried that we weren't asking enough. Currently, the chief, I've been asking for a while that we could get 4 people hired to get us back to full staff, but with cuts, we had to limit 1 position. So I just don't want us to go out to the residents and tell them, you know, we're going to try to be getting up 2 ambulances, but we're still going to be 1 shift short. If we're going to do this, we should do it correctly. We should, if we need 4 guys, then we should try to allocate a little bit more money to potentially help offset the cost of 4 guys. Currently, right now, the chief's getting killed, and we got we're 3 months into the budget, and he's already $83,000 in overtime. $83,000 in overtime. We budgeted 120, 130, 130,000. We're 3 months into the budget. It's only going to get uglier. Yeah. So, in my opinion, I'd like us to approve hiring the 4th guy now. But if we don't have that money right now, or we can't find that money right now, the best way to do this, I know the police chief has ideas what to do with his guys. I know the fire chief has, you know, they definitely know what they need to do. But I just want to make sure that we're asking the right amount, because this is what we need. And the residents need to know that this is what we need, and we also need to provide that then. So I think I definitely want to go with this, because the money's not going to run out. These positions will be funded in the future. Right. It's not going to dry up, and then people are given pink slips. So I definitely want to go with the other, and I would like to see it increased.
Yeah, I agree with Nick, because if we sit here and we keep shelling out funds for overtime, it was, you know, it didn't do any good to get the 3 people, and you're still paying all that overtime. Either way, whether you go for 4, you know, or none, you know, the cost of the overtime.
And the bleeding's going to continue, because, I mean, Jimmy, when are we looking at roughly maybe for these guys to get in? I mean, let's.
The 3, we've got the acceptance of 2 additional offers of employment. We're waiting on the 3rd. We're not waiting on the 3rd one.
Yeah.
We're in the process of getting them scheduled for the medical and stuff.
And they still have to go for their psychs as well?
Their medical and psych, yeah.
So there's still 2 more steps before we can get even these 3, and we're short 4. You know, so it's just. And
The
then
only thing to keep in mind, and I understand what you're saying, but we're short close to almost 10 in the police department. We had 29, we had 30 we didn't fill, and we lost the other ones through attrition. So I would think that the chief would want an additional personnel as well, which jacks it back up again. So, you know, keep that in mind. So whatever your rate is going to be, you know, over the 1.668%, you don't want to make it too high that it's going to be a no.
well, no,
But the 3 people that we're asking for a specific thing, we want to get a second ambulance up and running. I mean, you know, we can provide you know, I don't want to say a better quality of service, but, you know, enough service to the community, so we're still not going to address that overtime, and we're going to be way over on that overtime. either way you're paying it.
Right, might as well pay it
You're
and
either
get an
paying the
extra
overtime
person.
or you're asking for,
Right.
the community to,
Right, but all I'm suggesting is don't jack the rate up too high, or you run the risk of getting a no, and then you're back to square one with nothing. I mean, right now, we're gonna hire 3 as replacements. This would be an additional 3. So in essence, the fire department would be very close to having as many or more than personnel in the police realm. And it was never like that.
so.
It was
let me
never
just-
like that.
Let me just ask something, so, Jimmy, you can help out with this one. Referendum passes, you get 3 people, and you're always gonna have that situation where you're gonna be at a minimal staff, which you wouldn't be able to run that second ambulance at a minimum staffing. And you're gonna be there a lot. You've got a lot of issues that dictate that to you,
It's gonna be
whether it's vacation time or injuries, Kelly days, whatever, all that, there's always that time off, so it seems like you're gonna be using those 3 a lot, and either there's gonna be 1, 2, or maybe all shifts, kind of, all short where you're not gonna run that second ambulance.
Yeah, well, I would imagine, though, based on the study, if we read it correctly, there were time parameters where the bulk of the calls came out, where the staffing level needed to be increased from certain times and things of that nature as well. So I would imagine that when your staffing levels are down to a situation that you only could run 1 ambulance, you're only going to run 1. I mean, because you have to. The other piece of that, which I know Nick and I have discussed this, that in the event that we have 2 ambulances operational, that there will always be an ambulance in town to service our residents. We will never send 2 ambulances out to some other place outside of whatever. Similar to what other departments do. There's always an ambulance in town to service our people.
Right, yeah,
So,
yeah, unless we get that triple header that
well, again,
happens unfortunately more than we'd like to.
well, the question I think is, I think everybody's for B. I think we need to figure out the number so we can put it in the referendum to send it off.
We have to do that tonight, because this has to be passed tonight, and Zoran has his
Is there a recommendation?
formula to figure out, what was it geared only to a reduction in the EAV, or can you turn it around that we need to get more tax revenue and build that in?
Well, I think, one, the question is how much more tax revenue, based on these discussions that you wanted over the original $1 million. And then is what type of additional safety do we want? As I said, for each 1% decrease in the EAV, you're looking at about a $9,400 decrease in the level of the property taxes that would be collected. So
And you said last year it declined, the EAV declined 3%?
3.5.
3.5, so that's 2731,
Yeah.
so.
Somebody tell me a number.
Well, I just want to throw something out there, just as a chief, for one thing. We've heard that, yes, your overtime budget is more than half of your annual budget, but what impact, since we have had the vacancies, are you under budget in your regular salaries and benefits?
I'm not sure where we're at with that.
Because I would think there's got to be some correlation. If your overtime is up because we had 3 vacancies,
Yeah.
then we should be seeing,
Yeah, I guess technically.
a positive variance in your regular salaries and
If
benefits.
you're looking at percentages, you're looking at almost 3 months into the new budget year, almost 1 full salary that hasn't been spent
Right.
out of the budget.
But
So I
again-
don't want to make it seem like we've got 80,000
But
that
3
were
staff members are gonna be,
overall.
would
Those
be,
are
would
over
be
and above,
hired
yes.
to run a second ambulance.
Yes, that's over and above.
But we're still short 1.
We're still short 1.
And from an operational standpoint, to run operations, day-to-day operations, the same.
Let-
I mean, they're 24-hour shifts.
Let me ask the question
need-
this way. What's your staffing right now, if you're fully staffed on a shift,
Staff,
each shift?
9 per shift.
9 per shift. Your minimum staffing is 7? 6? Okay. If we go to a second ambulance, what would be fully staffed? That number 9 increases?
Fully staffed, it goes to 30, 10 per shift.
10 per shift. So you could potentially still
And
be understaffed every shift,
yeah,
which is going,
theoretically-
which is more likely than not.
Seven's gonna be the magic number for the minimum wage at that point.
But would you be able to run 2 ambulances at 7?
Yes, with some difficulty.
Okay,
But
s-
yeah, it's doable, yeah.
Okay, so, but we still increase that number by 1, whether it's minimum or the fully staffed, we still increase it by 1, so there's always that potential.
Right, and to look at the layout of the schedules at that point too, there's gonna be certain days now where I've got, our cycles are based on 27 days. So, every shift now, there's gonna be one, day in the shift that there's gonna be 2 tele days that we're gonna have to be scheduled. So those days, that minimum already is gonna drop. That day starts out with 8 people automatically, once per cycle per shift. So. that's-
So those 3 extra additional employees still get the Kelly days, still get vacation days, so you're still creating a situation with those 3.
Yeah. So logistically, yeah, it's like.
I mean, I get it, we don't want
It's
to,
not impossible.
we don't want to ask for too much, but I agree with Nick, we're going to do this, and I just got this sinking feeling that we're going to be back at that same situation, we're always going to be short, we're always going to be putting more overtime in, funding into all the overtime budget.
Well, essentially, one shift, very rarely will you be able to staff the second ambulance, on one shift, if we don't even out the numbers. And that's what my thing is tonight, if we could decide whether or not we could fund that position tonight, because, I mean, at the rate we're going, we'll have essentially paid for it by the end of come next April, we'll have essentially already paid for an entire full-time position in the amount of overtime that we're going to shell out. So either we fund that position today and get them at their current full staffing and then ask for the 3 through the referendum, or we try to split the baby, find some money now to, help do it, and money with the referendum, or ask for the 4 fire and the 3 police.
Well, the referendum covers 3 personnel in the fire department.
3 and
That-
3.
That number's in there already. 3 for fire, 3 for police.
Sam, what were you looking for police? The 3, or to increase that to 4 as well, or 5?
I was trying to balance both sides of the game out. When we talked about the study,
Yeah.
we were pretty much in agreement that we wanted 3 people to run that. Jim indicated that that would be a good scenario to start with. So I know where they are in the police department as well, that they're down. We have
Are all the 3 shifts equal?
but we lost foot patrol, we lost bike patrol,
Right.
we lost these types of jobs in the PD that we were generous enough to have up until we could not afford it anymore, and through attrition, we did not hire individuals, which, in theory, affects your pensions. I mean, if you're not hiring people and you're taking
Nobody
people
putting
off and
in.
people are drawn,
Okay, there's nobody putting
your pensions are starting to decline, and we've dipped in the police pensions already from the 60, almost 70%, and our goal was to try to get to 80, which we're never going to hit in another year, and, not going to happen. So keep that in mind. It's not that I'm against the 4th guy. You're always going to have somebody, unfortunately, getting hurt, somebody sick, somebody a Kelly day. You're always going to have those situations where you're not going to be able to run the double ambulance. I'm hoping that it's less than more. Again, all I'm suggesting is I don't want to make the rate too high that it fails. I want to make the rate high enough that it'll get us in the game, so to speak, and then see how it flies to a certain degree, and then hopefully the EAV and the revenues come in that we can support another person, whether it be PD, FD, or both.
Well,
I mean, that's just my concern. I don't want
No,
to.
I get it. But Jimmy, just roughly, how many guys off do you have right now on injured, disability, something?
I've got 2 off on disability right now with the anticipation of one of them finally getting back. Obviously, that was a health problem we couldn't deal with,
Mhm.
out of his control, but in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
And then the others more long-term?
The other, the one that was longer term, he's the one coming back.
Oh, okay.
And then, right now, we got back.
Okay.
It's kind of
Unknown.
there right now.
So you're short 4 positions currently. I mean, I'm just trying to, for us to gauge a forecast of how the rest of this year is going to continue. You're short 4, down 2 with injury. So we're short 6 on a how many man department? 27-man department? Okay, so you're missing 6 on a 27-man department. You're already, it's tough to function, and as a result, this overtime goes through the roof. So, I mean, I completely understand what you're saying, Mayor. I don't want it, the shock value is going to be a shock value anyways
Right.
for people when they read it, and nobody wants to hear about a tax increase. And I'm fine then with the 3 and the 3, but then I think that we really need to strongly look at this year, trying to find some money. If Janet and the chief can sit together, sharpen the pencils, and try to get that 4th guy in the door this year, and get our staffing levels back to where they need to be for you to function.
I mean, for a moment, forget about the new ambulance personnel. Over the time that we've been sitting on this board, we've harped about FD overtime for a number of reasons and a number of things that have happened where the overtime was in excess of what was budgeted, and there always was a reason. Whether we accepted a reason or not, it was a reason, and we've been over more than we were under. So I would imagine that those kinds of things, hopefully we're trying to change that with the additional personnel, where it becomes within the budget.
Yeah,
I've been
trying to, as the manpower has allowed, I've put guys in different shifts to lessen out the overtime, instead of 2 overtime positions, only 1 being created, things like that. So I've been doing the best I can with.
But I think the question for Zorn, and like I said, I'm not against the 4th guy, I just don't want to pooch the thing. I think what I would ask you is to figure out with the EAV reduction, what potential numbers, like Mike indicated, would change us so we're not losing that to any certain degree with the potential of hiring 3 people in there. So
Yeah, with the 3.5, assuming a 3.5% decrease, you're looking at about $33,000.
okay, but how would that affect the numbers and the percentage of the ask in the box?
The additional rate increase would be .238.
0.238.
From .23, right?
.230, yes.
Oh,
So
Okay.
the limiting rate would be 1.676.
That's not too much shock.
And then you're going to have changes in
Yes.
paragraphs 1 and 2, Zorn?
Right.
What's the second number?
The change in paragraph 1 is to the
Is
second
it
number.
1.6?
Something like that.
The first number stays the same. It's 7,291,507. And in paragraph 2 would be $64, 64.04. Let me just make sure this is right.
I mean, I think that's, you swallow that.
I thought it was gonna be higher. I mean, I
Yeah,
was
that's
always
not-
looking at the
that's
bottom
not
one being like
changing things.
175.
It's $63.51.
What is it, Zorn?
$63.51 on number 2.
6351.
Are we
Instead of 60.
Oh.
balanced on that, or, you know, is there,
So it goes up.
is there
No, I don't think so either.
is there
I'm good.
a higher number that you're suggesting?
That's not too bad, but,
I mean, obviously, we have to sell it, and the reason it is, and, you know, we've started this 2 meetings ago, was we spent 26 grand on a study that indicated that based on our call volume, and based what I'm hearing from other municipalities, that, you know, that have 8,000 people are functioning on 1 ambulance. We have double the population in this town, so theoretically, just by your mindset, we should have 2 ambulances, based on that alone, by the number of people that reside in this town. Hillside has 8,000, they have 1 ambulance. We have 16,000, wouldn't that lead you to believe that we need a second? You know, so anyway, I'm fine with the numbers, if you're fine with the numbers.
yeah, that's,
Um,
not too
I
bad.
think we can sell it as an extra 17 cents a day.
A cup of, less than a cup of
Less
coffee.
than a cup of coffee.
Yep.
I mean, I'm fine with it.
So, and that's getting, that's 4 and 3? Or what is that? Give us
that's
that.
3 and
That's
3.
Three and three.
3.
3 and 3.
And the provision for if the EAV drops, that
Okay.
it's stable.
Well,
Is there, I'm sorry. Yeah, we can't sell it out there, but
get it.
individually, I think it says it in the ad.
yeah. I get
You know, we could say what the ad says. You know, if somebody asks you what it's for, we've already been on record, I think, of saying what we wanted to do. We spent good money for a study that I would like to try to conform to. All right, anybody else have any questions on that? All right, there's a motion, a second on the floor from,
There's a motion, a second for A. I would ask that the mover and the seconder withdraw their
Carl and Tom.
move and second on that, and then it'll just die.
I withdraw it.
Okay, any further discussion on A? We'll cross that one out. So, is there a motion and a second to approve B, an ordinance providing for the submission of the electors of the Village of Westchester County, Illinois, for the general election to be held November 8th, 2016, a public question as to whether the limiting rate under the property tax extension limitation law for the Village of Westchester be increased?
As amended as follows. In Section 3, be increased by an additional amount equal to 0.238% above the limiting rate for the purpose of public safety, police, fire, and other municipal purposes for levy year 2015, and be equal to 1.676% of the equalized assessed value of the taxable property therein for tax levy year 2016. Also, as amended in Section 4, Paragraph 1, where it states at the end of that paragraph, and the approximate amount of taxes extendable if the proposition is approved is $7,291,507. And finally, amending Paragraph 2 of Section 4, at the end of that paragraph, where it states, having a fair market value at the time of referendum of $100,000 is estimated to be $63.51. Somebody could move and second that.
Second.
Carl and, who was the second, Nick? Carl and Nick on B. Carl. Roll call, please.
Aye.
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 Aye, motion carries.
Mr. President, I'll have to get you a revised ordinance tomorrow for your signature. Thank you. Thank you, Zorn.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, item number C, resolution authorize expenditure of general fund revenues in an amount not to exceed $70,000 for legal costs to be incurred in defense of the pending litigation, which was indicated as Verizon. I asked Janet to place this on the agenda to give us some direction outside of our exec session. Is there a move and a second?
I think
for
we need to
discussion?
move the waiver of this committee of the whole on this item.
Yes.
Okay, is there a motion to waive the committee of the whole?
So moved.
Carl, in a second?
I'll second.
Frank?
Yeah.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Celestino?
Aye.
Trustee Perry?
Aye.
Trustee Pojemski?
Aye.
Trustee Stecker?
Aye.
Trustee Yurkovich?
Aye.
Trustee Julia?
Aye, motion carries. Now, for the approval, is there a motion and a second?
I'll move.
Carl, second.
So moved.
What's that, Angelo? I'm sorry. Angelo. Discussion. What?
Okay.
I'll go last.
Okay. Thank you. I'd like to admit, as I begin, I would like to admit that I was not present at the first public hearing regarding the cell tower due to a family medical situation that occurred in November. I did attend the second, which was the joint meeting, and I was there not to be seen, but to listen, to hear the concerns of all those present. And I was there because it was my job as a member of the board. I wish to thank all the members, all the residents who attended that meeting, spoke out, as well as all those who attended the subsequent board meeting in which the final decision was made. I also would like to thank President Puglia for all his time, efforts, and research in doing this regarding this issue, and the presentation he made to the body in making its case to the petitioners regarding the board's actions. During this time, between the two meetings, I had done my own research, and I spoke to a few village managers as well as other trustees from other communities to find out how, when these actions happened in their communities, how it was handled. Those communities who opposed this technology had done so by enacting very strict ordinances that limited or completely banned the use of them altogether. And also with doing this, some communities actually, in their yearly budgeting process, budgeted amounts of money to be used in case of possible future litigation. Here lies our community situation. We did not enact a strict ordinance at the time, and we allowed for the installation of a cell tower in one of our parks, and we approved another cell tower in a particular park, though it did not get constructed. At the meeting, the board acted on the wishes of the community. The community came out, asked us, and we acted on it. And we took a chance that a potential lawsuit would not arise. Unfortunately, this did not happen. A lawsuit did come about. Now we are faced with a challenge to fight this lawsuit with funds that we do not have budgeted for, on a case that we could potentially lose, spending a significant amount of funds, and in the end, still have a cell tower erected. To do this, we will have to fund this unfunded situation. Because we are not a home rule community, and we are limited in both how funds can be raised as well as spent. And now this board must find the necessary funds to prepare for this possible for this possible litigation. And currently, this board actually has to find funds to repair our emergency notification siren, an expense that must be done in regards to public safety. This is something we have pending right now. This resolution is asking for $70,000 to be fought for this litigation. This amount could just be the starting point. It could increase. It could be greater than what the amount of this resolution. And how do we find this money? The cost of this money to fund this lawsuit would come out of our operating budget this year. What does that mean? Well, services or operations would have to be cut. $70,000 pays for over 1,200 tons of asphalt to repair our streets, as well as doing other things regarding our infrastructure. And in my opinion, regarding infrastructure, whatever we budget every year for it, for maintaining as well as repairing and replacing, it's never enough. We always need to do more. It also pays for the cost of crack sealing to enhance the life of the streets that we have already repaired and to make sure they stay viable. It pays for the vacuuming of all our inlets, catch basins, sewers to prevent possible street flooding and home flooding. Another possible cut may have to be with regards to our village's forestry budget regarding our trees. This in itself we could risk losing our National Tree City USA distinction that we have worked so hard to obtain. We now may lose. And I dare say it, but most important, it may involve losing services in our operations regarding a reduction in force, which I don't want to see happen. But where does this money come from? If we don't go from our operating budget, we have to then go from the village's reserve funds, that we have to maintain a specific amount that we do through village ordinance. And if we dip below this amount, we risking our credit rating and jeopardizing any future planning and operation. And lastly, for what we just did, we just as a board are now asking the residents to increase the amount of money they commit to the village through taxes to fund and expand the emergency services to our village. We just asked them for that. I have heard the opinions of many people, and I respect them greatly. And I had no reservations in voting against this happening. But unfortunately, with regarding this situation, regarding this pending litigation, I cannot accept voting for this resolution. It's because I believe it is not fiscally responsible. And the damage to our overall finances, as well as our operations and services to the residents, would be great. Like I said, wish there was another way we can do this, but I'm sorry. Like I said, it's given me a lot of pause, but I'm here in hopes of keeping this village's finances afloat and looking out for the village as a whole. And unfortunately, I think this lawsuit and funding it is not the right way. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I think the main reason we want to talk about this today is to let the community know what we know. I don't think they have the full picture. So under advisement from our legal counsel is why we're basing our decisions. Legal counsel has told us that based on case law, it's not favorable that we would be on top in this proceeding. I hate to put $70,000 into it and find out we got to this one point And if we don't go any further and put more money into it, that 70,000 was a waste of time. $70,000 will not get us anywhere. And as you guys can all hear tonight, we're sitting here, and we've talked about this every meeting, there's always something different that comes up. Emergency services, the emergency siren, I mean, there's always stuff that comes up. We don't have the funding for it. But we're willing to throw $70,000 away when we know, when we've been advised that we would probably not prevail. So we can put $70,000, get to that point, and then what? And then have everybody tell us, you're gonna lay down and die again? You're not gonna spend more money and fight this and fight this and fight this?
Becomes an
You know,
albatross.
we've sat here and we've listened to both sides, and trust me, I agree with the community. I don't like to see it there either, but the fact of the matter is, I just don't think it would be fiscally responsible for us, knowing the financial situation of the village, to just throw money away like that, and after we've been told we probably wouldn't prevail. Not that there's not a chance, I'm not saying that, but it looks as if we've been, directed, we wouldn't have a great chance at it.
I've got a question for Mike. Let's say we litigate, we defend ourselves, we win. Can they appeal?
Can Verizon appeal? Yes.
Correct.
I mean,
Well,
there's a federal
right, and then you're looking at,
circuit court of appeals that they could take the decision to.
right,
yes.
so you're looking at the whole circus all over again.
Well, the appeal goes to the documents that were submitted.
Still
There has
have
to be
to-
a reason to appeal, would be the testimony.
You have to pay Mike to handle that for us.
Right, oh, yeah.
Mike doesn't
It's
come
not
cheap.
free.
But my point is, where do we get after the $70,000?
Yeah.
What does that get us to?
Right, you still got empty strings there. That's it.
Anybody, Nick?
Just reiterate what Angela had said. I don't think there's anyone on this board that wants it. I think we were unanimous in the fact that we didn't want it. We were hoping they'd go away. But now to this point, it's sad that we have to go out to the taxpayers to beg, basically, just to get the funds to put our emergency services where they need to be. But unfortunately, that's kind of the state that we're in right now. We're a non-home rule community, and we're stretched extremely thin. These types of things come up constantly, and I just don't know where 70,000 gets us. If $70,000 gets us to one door, but there might be 10 more. When do you stop? So I have a very difficult time. We're talking about a firefighter position right now. $70,000 could pay for that firefighter position that we currently don't have. So I just definitely don't want it. I mean, it's going to be it would be in my backyard. Not in favor of it, wasn't in favor of it, but I was just hoping these guys would go away, and they don't, and now it's a fiscal decision.
Anybody else? Just waiting for me. Okay. I wrote this out again. It's a lot less. It's only a page and a half. Over the past few weeks, I've had an opportunity to read through the Verizon lawsuit against the village denying the cell tower in Mayfair Park. Based on Verizon's account, they are right. I did not support the installation of a cell tower in the middle of the center field at Mayfair Park. I did, however, offer a site on our water tower, and I encouraged them to work with Greg, our IT coordinator, to see if we could, number one, fix our police data transmission problem, and two, not have a tower erected in the middle of the park, close to our schools, churches, and backyards. In essence, to repeat my quote, kill two birds with one stone. At a subsequent hearing, I informed Verizon of a prior board's approval to construct a cell tower at Mayfair Park. The cell tower approved with a stealth flagpole similar to what was adopted and approved at the community park in 2007. It is true, like many of the residents and planning and zoning board commissioners, that did not want the tower at the location Verizon indicated. Verizon, after being informed of the prior site approval, had an opportunity to ask the boards to reconsider an already approved site that may or may not have met with the resistance that we're faced now. And with the upcoming suit that was filed, with our court date being August 25th. The Park District could have been asked to change the property description or ask for a name change on the original application of a previously approved by the village in October of 2009, which was more toward the MWRD grassy knoll area adjacent to their parking lot back there. Greg asked for additional information from Verizon to determine how the maps indicating this dead zone were determined on my request. I learned that there may be another alternative utilizing new technology called small cells that utilize utility poles to erect antennas to make sure all Westchester residents and those driving through, even those on Somerset or Stratford, could receive better service in addition to the ones who would benefit from the tower. Because if you look at those propagation maps that we were sent, those people are still left out in the cold and are still residents without service. Attending all the hearings myself, there was only 2 people who either by email or direct testimony supported the idea of placing a tower and subsequent fenced area in the center field outfield. I asked Verizon to explain why small cell would not work since it's being utilized by them in other communities. They have not replied to my question to date, and I'm not expecting them to reply. I asked for some more time for us to determine independently if small cells would work. However, we need their data to share with the consultant that we would have to look at, and we have not been supplied with any information other than the colored maps, which apparently is not enough to work with for anybody to determine if small cell will work or will not work. Verizon characterized my statements as a rant, unscientific, entirely improper and impermissible under applicable law, and ultimately of no value of anything. I guess a waste of time, energy, and effort on my part. They have characterized all the citizens and appointed board members' comments as unsupported and improper reasoning. I would counter that instead of working collaboratively to fix a problem, I did my best as your president, without any guidance from the board, our attorney, or staff, to find a resolution on my own, utilizing research and the common sense approach my parents' bosses and education led me to believe would be of value to mitigate conflicting opinions. I guess I must have hit a nerve with my comments. The audacity of me to challenge the corporate giant Verizon, whose net worth is $130 billion. They can afford to file suit against any village for a denial of anything they do as long as they can. Verizon, as recently as July 7, 2016, filed suit against the city of Joliet for denying a cell tower in that community. Apparently, they can afford to force villages to roll over and play dead because they know at the end of the day, every village is chasing hard-earned tax dollars to provide basic services at a time where the economy, pension costs, salaries, and medical benefits are escalating. The protracted court appearance and appeals will not make a dent in their bottom line. Their corporate officers, attorneys, lobbyists will still get paid and paid handsomely. They know we do not have the disposable cash on hand to spend thousands of dollars to possibly lose. They know they were dealing with regular citizens on appointed boards and citizens who have opinions about health, safety, aesthetics, and the potential loss of property value. They're paid experts for everything. And they know we scramble asking the question of how much does it cost no matter what we purchase, looking for a bargain behind every door. Today I went to the park and measured from the center field light pole to a tree at the south end of the park just west of the paved parking lot that is the approximate site that was approved back in 2009. It's about 496 feet. I measured from that tree to the vicinity of Boger and Wakefield to that corner house on the other side of where the rocks are at, which is about 324 feet, which is where the closest residence property line would be. I know for some the placement anywhere in the park is not palatable. It is a compromise based on prior approval and far enough away from the children's homes, and may over time be sheltered a little bit more from the tree-lined Mastodon Creek feeding the Mayfair retention pond. If allowed at the August court date, I will renew my proposal unless this board votes to support the fight against the giant and have winner take all. So I think we're being bullied. I've read all these cases. I've read cases in other districts. Melissa sent a whole host of them there. Some were won, some were lost. There are a lot of questions out there, and the Telephone Act of '96 is running the show. If you look on the internet and look at cell tower fights, there's plenty of them out there that I found where there were $1 million judgments that they weren't allowed to put it in scenic locations. I feel that we've put enough data in based on the information that was read at each one of these hearings from the citizenry that proves our point. I mean, it's a crapshoot. I understand money. I understand it well. I just don't like to be bullied by anybody, and I think Verizon in this regard is bullying us. Should we had codes that were more stricter, like Huntley, that said they had to be 8,000 feet away from something and 15 feet from the property line? Yes, we should have. Should we totally have restricted it from residential areas and only allowed it in the business or commercial areas? Maybe we should have. Is there a study done out there that said what would be the best place to put a 120-foot tower so all the residents of Westchester could enjoy all the things that we're supposed to enjoy? Where is that spot? Is it in the Forest Preserve? Is it at Nick's house? Is it at my house? Is it at Angelo's house in the affected area? In my opinion, if the telecommunication law is that strong that they should have eminent domain power, that if Angelo's house is the best, they should be able to knock his house down after compensating him and putting that crazy tower up there. But it's not. The park saw an opportunity for money. They had another one in another park. We approved one based on absolutely no negative conversation, even though we've lettered more people on 2 different occasions as far as the issue was concerned than we did back then. For what reason, I don't know. There's a different community development director, why only certain people were noticed and not as many as were noticed for today. I can't answer that question. So, I'm not sure how this hearing will go. I would like to ask my questions of the small cell technology and at least get an answer. I think we're entitled to that. Tell me it won't work, and tell me why. And then if the board so chooses, I'll ask them put it where we approved it in 2009. And then if they say those are improper questions for me to even ask, that we're going to go to this hearing and say, Verizon, put it up where you want it, 85 foot, the center field light standard. I just think everybody should know where we're going. Now, as far as attorney fees in there, the Telecommunication Act, based on the data that was put here, and I highlighted more pages than I wanted to, indicates that it's not, attorney fees are not attached via the act, pretty much. So, anyway, that's where I stand. I think the people should know where we're at. I don't want to go down to to the hearing in August and say, guess what, it's going up over there, and then have to come back and write about it and why. I thought the people should know how we feel, and I thank you all for your comments. I get it. I really do. But we heard loud and clear from pretty much everybody that they didn't want it there. And I'll leave with this tidbit, which I found out late. As I was going through all this information and the lawsuit from Verizon that is this high, has every bit of data that we've ever talked about, I came upon our ordinance, and this one will hit you right in the forehead. In our section 18 in 97, it states that if a carrier goes off the pole, it has to come down if they're off for, I think it's 12 months. There's been no carrier on the Park District thing for over a year and a half. They had 90 days to get that pole down in the park. But we were never notified until recently that there was no carriers on it, and now that Verizon wants to take it over, or whatever carrier it is, to put somebody back up there. So we missed a golden opportunity on ourselves to have that one yanked down in Community Park because there were no carriers and it violated our code. So, if you think your frustration is up, you have no idea what I've been reading over the last several weeks.
Let me ask you something, because I requested from our village manager that we all be copied on all the information from our attorneys, case law, the act that says that you can't use medical issues as a fight in all this. We weren't provided any case law that said anybody prevailed. I'm kind of confused here, because now I'm hearing that there's all these cases. I'd like to see them too myself.
Here they are. This is what was sent.
Not to us. Did
Everybody
anybody
got
prevail?
Everybody got it?
Everybody got
I
it.
think there was five.
Yeah, Huntley prevailed.
There was other circumstances in there. So
Yeah, I
but
mean,
the other
none of the
ones didn't prevail.
circumstances are 100% like ours.
But the other ones didn't prevail.
No, there are some that did not prevail.
I didn't see anything in there that prevailed.
I
And
think
what we
Huntley
were sent, I
prevailed.
think there was 5 case laws sent to us.
So,
I didn't see anything that prevailed.
Yeah, I think there were 7. 2 of them were the
yeah,
municipality
two were
prevailed.
prevailed.
One was because of the request to put the cell tower on less than 40% of what the required lot area was. The other one was with the bluff. I think it was mentioned in
Yes, the one that was in
It
the
was
scenic area
the scenic
of,
area on the bluff.
of
the
St.
height of the
Croix.
bluff, Yeah,
Yeah.
so that was a Wisconsin case.
Whose responsibility, is it the owner of the property's responsibility to notify us if
Doesn't-
it becomes vacant? I mean, otherwise, a lot of
Didn't
these
say.
are hidden. I mean, some of them are in bell towers, and we don't even know that they existed. We had an ordinance, but who's supposed to enforce? I mean, are they supposed to notify us once they become vacated, or?
1856-90, not operated for 12 months, considered abandoned, must be removed within 90 days.
But,
That's what our ordinance is.
so it's vague.
Well,
I
it's
was
not
just-
vague, it's just somebody should have told us.
Well, yeah, but that's what I'm saying, is that,
Well,
was it on the park, should the
I
park
would
have
say
notified us?
it was on the park.
Okay.
Because they're the ones that asked for the thing. How do
Yeah.
we know?
No, that's.
Here,
How
but
do we-
let's get back to the $70,000. What is this gonna get us? Let everybody know what this gets us. Where does it get us? I don't wanna know win or lose. Where does it get us in this litigation?
How far in the game?
Yeah, we get to go there and argue our point for $70,000, or
Right.
where does it take us? Because I'm kind of unclear. I want to know, how far does that take us into the whole thing? I know that number is just kind of a rounded number.
I don't know.
I mean,
We're
we're being asked to make a decision here, but nobody knows.
you'll have to call experts to look at this. Mike would have to
The
look at
70,000,
some kind of
I thought didn't
defense.
include experts. I thought that was just going to be
Right.
attorney's fees and stuff, legal fees. And
We discussed this in executive session, and be happy to go into executive session and tell you about it again. I gave you that figure. I said that could be the conclusion of the case. It would include expert witness fees. So it's a ballpark guesstimate. I mean, we've spent money on this case already, so.
Well, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I said my piece. I will do what the board directs me to do on August 25th. Janet and I are planning to go down with Mike or Melissa or whatever the case may be. I just needed direction, and I needed to get it off my chest, because if you look at their quotes about me in their lawsuit, that I'm the one that's Mr. Negative, which I would argue the contrary, that I tried to find another spot or another type of equipment or something that would theoretically help everybody and get it out of the middle of the park. I think that was the concern. Now, we can't go back to 2009 because we approved it, not you, but Nick and I were here with the other board unanimously because there was not one negative piece that was brought up, and there was one already operational.
So we're saying there's a chance now?
No, I'm not saying there's a chance of anything. Mike has said to you and Melissa in executive session,
You know,
an opinion.
I want to emphasize, the reason the Open Meetings Act allows us to discuss pending litigation is so that we don't disclose any type of strategy or discussions that we've had at an open session that allows our opponents an advantage. And some of the things that are said here tonight, I think, can be utilized against us. So, you know, I'm more than willing to go into executive session and answer every single question that I thought. Some of this is repetitive. I've made these statements before. And to hear my legal advice that I provided in closed session brought out in the public doesn't make me feel comfortable. But you've said it. I've answered your questions. We've talked about this not only at the executive sessions that I've attended, but at the last meeting. I asked my associate attorney to once again go into executive session and make sure that everybody had an opportunity to speak with regard to their position on this. Now you've done that publicly. You know, I don't want to. I've given you case law. I've given you my advice. I've told you what we can do, what we are willing to do. It's up to the board. So I don't want to help Verizon any more than I have to.
Well, I said my piece. I'm comfortable that there's a motion and a second on the floor for either a yes to go ahead or no not to go ahead. So if no other questions, I'll call the question. So, a resolution to authorize the expenditure of general fund revenues in the amount not to exceed $70,000 for legal costs to be incurred in defense of the pending litigation. So if you say yes, we expend it. If you say no, we don't. Clear, everybody? Okay. Call the roll.
Trustee Celestino?
No.
Trustee Calpagno?
No.
Trustee Carey?
No.
Trustee Stecker?
No.
Trustee Yurkovich?
No.
President Julia?
Yes. Motion fails. We will not be expending any additional monies toward the lawsuit. Well,
I hope I get paid for going to
Well,
this
no. Other than
hearing
what you're
on
going to
August
get to hear.
25th, and whatever follows that, so.
Okay. Yes, that is reasonable. I would not cut you off at the ankles.
Janet, roughly, do we have an idea, a rough estimate as to how much we've already put in?
For this, I do not this evening. I can find that out and communicate it to the board.
Thank you.
But with that, if you're going to add the hearings in, I think that needs to be a separate amount of money, because we would have had the hearings win, place, or show. If there was extra monies to file these briefs with us and do that kind of stuff, that's extra money. The money for the hearings, we would have done anyway. Managers report.
Okay, just a couple things this evening. I wanted to let everybody know that I did received a letter today from the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. They have given us our final distribution on the Mayfair Reservoir Expansion Project. Received a letter from Catherine O'Connor, who is the Director of Engineering, that states, Dear Ms. Mattheis, Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago is very pleased to have partnered with the Village of Westchester on the subject project, which was one of the original projects selected for assistance by the district under our Phase 2 Stormwater Management Program. We commend you for the successful completion of the new storm sewer and expanded Mayfair Reservoir, and are delighted to have played a role in providing flood relief for the residents in your community through this fruitful partnership. In accordance with our intergovernmental agreement, we have enclosed a check in the amount of $621,778, which serves the district's final reimbursement for this project. Very truly yours, Catherine O'Connor. And I know that Robert, he had a few conversations with Holly Souter, who was their senior engineer with MWRD, and they're looking perhaps at crafting an article to put in the professional publications on the success of the project. So I think that would be a nice feather in our cap if that does happen. Second, I do want to, on behalf of the village and the administration, to express our condolences to Trustee Celestino on the recent death of his grandfather, who passed away just several days after his 100th birthday. So a life well lived, but our deepest sympathies to the family. And on a happier note, congratulations to Trustee Stecker on the arrival of Tegan Louise last Monday, August 1st. She's gorgeous. Anybody wants to see pictures, I'm sure
God,
Nick,
I got a good-looking wife.
I'm sure Nick would be happy to share pictures with you. So,
Congratulations and condolences, certainly.
yeah, that's all I have this evening.
Michael, anything else?
Nothing for open session, thank you.
Board members, Frankie, EDC.
I have nothing new to report, talked about the same stuff.
Nikolai.
You're just going to hear the same banter from me every meeting, I guess, until we try to get a fourth guy by Jimmy. I just want us to try to look at this, try to fill that last firefighter position. I'm going to just keep saying it every meeting. So hopefully we can look into that and we can make that happen. Also, I just wanted to reiterate I know Janet wasn't here at the last meeting, but the computers, I just want to make sure I wasn't crazy, and I know that we asked for the consent of the board, and in the last meeting, to get to allocate the funds to get the police chief those computers, and I know it was in the last meeting, so I know we're gonna have to find the money somehow, some way, but we need to get going on that.
Carl.
First and foremost, I'd like to thank all, not only village staff, but the park district staff, not only for the successful National Night Out, but also the Music in the Park events. I attended both of them. Weather was perfect. You couldn't ask for better weather. I thought there was a fair amount of people there, and I thought everything went well. So I want to say thank you. Both of those were great events. Also, I'd like to remind everybody that this Saturday, once again, we'll be doing electronic recycling over at the water tower from 9 to 11:30 for residents only. Doors will be closed at 11:30 because that's when the truck leaves. And like I said, it's welcome to all residents, and if there is any questions regarding what is accepted and what is not, to just check the village's website. Thank you very much.
Angela.
Nothing this evening.
Frankie. Or Tommy.
I have nothing.
I'm calling you twice. Chief.
Imagine that when my microphone doesn't work. Can we hide the one that doesn't work? Every meeting.
What? Why don't we just get new mics?
No money.
No money. Yeah.
Good thing you're cheap. I just like this, I really don't have much of a report other than I'd like to restate again on National Night Out last week that it's a great event, well attended, and I want to make a special shout out to Officer Rob Ferber. Nobody really knows how hard Rob works on these special events, especially involving the police department. So if you get a chance and you bump into Rob in your travels here throughout the village, just kind of, if I wouldn't mind, give him a pat on the back and say thanks for all he does, because he works really hard at making sure that these events go off real well, and he puts in a lot of his own time. And I just want to give him a special shout out to everybody, so thank you.
So speaking of events, we've solidified our date for our open house. It's going to be October 13th, is a Thursday night, from 6 p.m. to 8:30. Last year we tried doing a Wednesday night or an evening, and it ended up being pretty successful with all the families coming out. We'll do our usual hot dogs and chips. That way parents don't have to worry about feeding their kids after work. They bring them by us, and we'll have our burn demonstration along with some other activities and stuff. And then the other thing is I received a call from Elmhurst Hospital yesterday in regards to a call that happened in June. They were kind of playing catch up on some of their recognition. Two of our paramedics, Matt LeMay and Matt Heiderman, are being recognized for the run of the month, the EMS run of the month, for a stroke call that they were in, along with the support staff of the ALS engine out of Station 2 with Mark Wanke and Joe Bailovic. Their assessment, their treatment, their communication to the hospital actually got this patient to the hospital, and with their assessment and communication with the hospital, they bypassed the emergency room and got the person to definitive stroke care with a positive outcome for the patient. So kudos to them. Elmhurst Hospital is going to come out. We're scheduling it some morning to recognize them and bring some of the bigwigs from the hospital, for a nice little ceremony and certificate. So congratulations to those guys. Again, always making us look good. So good job, everyone.
Chris?
Just wanted to report that at the last meeting we had mentioned we were going to take a call from Moody's. Unfortunately, we found out yesterday that the village's general obligation rating went down from AA2 to AA3. And it's solely based on that conversation on the growing unfunded pension liabilities with the village. I guess the one good thing is, in the conversation, it has nothing to do with management. Management's strong. We still are AA rated. And I can tell you just by looking at their website that within the last 6 weeks, Oak Park, Brookfield, Bolingbrook, Schaumburg have all been downgraded. So it's happening all over due to these pension liabilities. And it's continued to happen this year. So that's all I have to report. If there's any questions.
And I think I sent everybody an article from Governing
About the pension, yeah.
about the pensions, that the actuarials that are thinking that the pension funds are going to grow
It's the lowest.
8%
Yeah.
was a 1.7.
Yeah.
So I think historically, even Chicago, I mean,
Their whole pension
Their-
thing is based on like
yeah,
that
they're- I
every
think
year.
they're triple B
Yeah.
with a negative outlook. I mean, it was in the
They're
paper today.
destined to fail.
So
The way they act.
And we were informed by our Moody's analyst that they take the pension numbers that are reported in the audit, which I believe are stated as 7% investment rate of return, and they do make adjustments for that, and we'll look at our liability according to their calculations of a more accurate investment rate, and that's where we really took a hit, and I think most Illinois governments are. We also, it's a challenge, Moody's is based out of New York primarily, and I don't think they understand our Illinois property tax impact. We get a report from the pension actuaries that tells us the recommended contribution for the year, and we levy that amount. However, we're always a year in arrears. So they're looking at it and saying, well, you were supposed to make, we'll just say a $250,000 contribution. You only made, $200. And we're saying, Yes, but we're gonna get that 250 in there next year because it takes a year. You're levying in December of the current year, and you're not gonna collect that until the following year. So we're always a year in arrears, which is challenging when they're evaluating your funding like this as well, so.
But my only comment would be, we've been doing this since how long? And Moody's have been rating everybody for so long. So you would think that that fact pattern of in the rears and pulling from last year would be a well-known fact. To me, it's not something that you should have to spell out to anybody when that's how it is.
It's the norm.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense that I gotta educate somebody on something that he should know before he asks the question. I mean, if they want to downgrade us for a reason, I get it. But they should know the rules of Illinois if they're rating Illinois towns.
Another strong factor for us, well, as far as the downgrading, was that we are a non-home rule community, and therefore we don't have the ability to raise revenues to increase our contributions. So that was a factor, but they did commend us on our strong financial management and keeping that 30 fund balance reserve. So had we, and we have to be aware of that in the future, start dipping into those fund balance reserves, we could be downgraded further.
And the GFOA award that we got.
Yes, we also were notified that our fiscal 15 audit did receive the Government Finance Officer's Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting again this year. So
There you go.
yay.
Okay, Gregory, I'm sorry, hiding back there.
No, forgive me if Janet mentioned this, that being a part of the special events, I was writing while she was talking, forgive me. But final movie of the year, it's going to be Thursday at dusk in the park again, usual place, Zootopia. We transitioned that movie from one of our rain dates. The DEA is doing their drug collection again. I know you have some commentary on that, and I'll let you discuss that a little bit. Walgreens has announced as well that some of their 24-hour locations are going to be doing drug collections as well. It's been about the same since I've talked about it before. I don't talk about it every week anymore, but the same amount is collected, cleaning it out here. So in the news within the last week or so, Walgreens has announced that their 24-hour facilities are going to start doing it. And once again, Mayor, I know had a meeting he attended that he's going to discuss with regards to some collection initiatives that are coming down the line. Also, not sure if you noticed, the mayor advised me to place some information on our website with regards to EPA air quality. He can discuss that as well. I just wanted to make known. I know somebody, just saw it there and wondered, where'd this come from? It looks a little bit different on our site. I used their logo to try and interact with our website into theirs. Again, Mayor can give you some further information, but he had communicated with me that this was some information, and I read a little bit further into it that the Mayor's Caucus was who advised you to do so, providing some information on that. One other thing before you can explain all of that, all of the things that I talked about, you can talk
Sure you don't
about.
want to sit here?
No, not at all. But it's not on the agenda, but I just wanted to give an update as to the siren. I spoke with Fulton Technologies again today, just prior to the meeting, finding out where our quote is. I sort of asked, are you really interested in providing us with a quote? He said he is. He's going to get us something by the end of the week. He estimates, he didn't want to do this on paper, but he estimates that it'll be very comparable to the number that I have on the other side, which I don't want to disclose publicly at this point, but he says that it's going to be comparable. He's familiar with Braniff and says their pricing is typically very close. So now it's a matter of determining which type of siren. They're basically the same. They're going to be four-way sirens. I don't want to say that I have any expertise as to which is going to be better. I'm going to take a look at the brand. One is Federal Signal. That I know the brand name. The other is American Signal. So then at that point, it just becomes us deciding which one we want to go with. So I just wanted to update on that.
Yeah, I mean, as you probably heard, both sirens went off last Tuesday, a week ago, and did their normal thing. I thought, I was standing by the garage, and I thought, I was by my house, and I thought that one was a little bit longer, but I wasn't timing the piece of it. So we have an intermittent problem. that certainly needs to be rectified, and I think what Greg's quotes, and correct me if I'm wrong, you are getting quotes so that both of those sirens will be
Yes. 'Cause
replaced and upgraded, and they're all brand new and they'll be good for another 10 years.
25
One was in
years,
96
hopefully.
and one was a little bit after that when we
Yeah.
finally got a pole up by FD2 to put some noise on the south end of town.
Correct.
So those are the quotes are for a doubleheader.
And I'll give them to the village manager, which I believe she can forward that on at that point then. Doesn't need to have to wait if I get it Friday. Just to have in hand. That's all I
Robert.
have. Busy summer for us. We continue with the sign replacement program. See us out pounding the new parking restriction signs in the ground. We're also doing a fair amount of chipping and trimming. You may have noticed a lot of pavement striping, so we're trying to renew parking areas and as much pavement striping as we can get done. Probably the most we've done in a number of years. Foundation pad for the new gazebo is in, and I think we're a number of weeks away from receiving that kit. And when it gets here, we'll put that up. Just
I have some volunteers to help in doing that. I have some public that have indicated years ago, and I reaffirmed that with Tommy Sullivan and Tommy Flowers or whatever. We just need a date and a time and a little bit of a barbecue, and we'll certainly, a number of board members here indicated that they wanted to help out with that, so a little sweat equity, we'll get it up in no time at all.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, always.
We just need someone to read
It's a
plans.
community park, so the community comes to help put it together. That's fine too. Just wanted to give everyone notice about our hydrant flushing. I know I talked about it before. We have a tentative start date, September 12th. We put a notice on the website, and we'll have signs out in the areas we're doing. We're going to do the whole town, but there will be discoloration in the water when we do this. We're passing out advance notices to businesses, particularly restaurants, medical centers, and dialysis centers that are in town, because the quality of the water affects what they do, maybe a little more than wash day, although it's not pleasant to have rusty water when you're doing the laundry. But we're passing out notices. We'll try to make it as aware as possible, but this is something we really need to do on a more regular basis than we have been doing. So we'll start doing this around the 12th of September. That's our planned date.
But how long do you think to get through everyone, just a guess? What are your plans versus, other hiccups that come? Because we're going to do crack filling. Hopefully the signs will be done in this next couple of weeks. I know they're knocking those out pretty heavily.
Right. We're going to try a little different technique, and we're going to use a combination of fire department and public works. So hopefully we'll be able to move quicker than we have in the past. But we want to be careful when we exercise all valves in our system. We are nearing the 90-year mark for 40% of our water distribution system. So we don't want to quick close any valves, because that creates significant other problems. So that will slow down the process somewhat. So we've had several discussions about how long this will take, and there's a variety of opinions out there. Typically, it would take about a month in a good system.
To do everything?
Yeah.
I mean, there's 1,000 hydrants. I mean, that's
867, but there's a, I don't want to go too fast. We'll see how it works. And we're going to do a Monday through Thursday, just so if there is a break or a crack, we're going to give it a day to surface, so we're not coming out on Saturday on overtime to fix all the breaks we created on Friday.
Just don't let them guys touch them. Don't let them guys touch them. If you let them guys touch them,
He's got some good equipment, though, so we need to work
you
together.
let them touch it, it's 1,600 a hydrant.
You open them real fast. I was going to say something.
Uh-huh.
They're going to teach us how to use the fire hydrant.
That's what Public Works is for.
Just
We're just
teach us
gonna
how to
use
clo-
the Public Works guy with us
us how to
24
close
hours a
it.
day, so when we have to turn on a hydrant, he'll do it. There's your fourth guy.
There you go. There's our fourth guy and our fifth guy.
Oh, my God.
They're experts at opening and using, and we're the experts at closing. I think that's how it works.
That's not a government operation, I don't know what is.
A lot of duct tape, guys.
Get rid of the wooden water mains.
Well, we're saving money. So that's our plan.
I'm sure that'll help with our ISO rating. Isn't that something that they
Yeah,
look at
that's
as well?
part of what we were working on, and what we had brought up literally a couple weeks. It was something I wanted to start working on, to actually voluntarily have them come out. Well, shortly after we discussed it at that one meeting, I actually received the notice from ISO that they're scheduled now to come out. So now they are coming out. So.
Make sure you show them the one in a new hydrant. I'd hate to have a break when the guy's standing there.
I'll have the public works guys do it.
Yeah, in anticipation of that and the ISO rating, we did budget this year to model have a computer model made of our distribution system. I had released that request for proposal to 6 engineering companies that do this type of work on Monday. So we should hear by the end of the month, and Chief can certainly look over those proposals as they come in. This is part of the ISO rating, and it's good for us to know for our operations. We will be able to model certain scenarios, a fire in a certain district, a fire by a school, and we will be able to see where our abilities to fight fire, and we'll calibrate to see how many gallons per minute we can derive in each area, and we'll be able to test for certain scenarios, even the supply going out for a period of time, and see what the results are. So the distribution model is something that every community should have. So we'll put the first one together here, and I think it'll help with our ISO rating.
Yeah, water is 40% of the ISO rating. So it's a
Sure,
big
yeah,
chunk
big.
change, so
What are we? Are we at 3 now, Jim?
we're at 3, and obviously
Just want to get it.
one, but
Yeah, well, we want to
definitely want to move on.
bump up to 2. I think if we had the manpower in place, that's a piece of that as well. And the PD and the dispatch, all that's a piece toward the rating, so. All right, anything else, sir? Melissa?
Good evening. I wanted to let everybody know that Christos is done with their facade repair. They were done by August 1st, which, so you'll probably have a request for reimbursement soon on the record of bills. Also, the EDC is having their 3rd business district meeting. It's for the historic Boulevard District, and it will be held at Joe's Place next Tuesday. Last month we had 2. Sorry?
Just telling Joe thanks.
Last month, we had 2 new businesses that opened. We issued 199 permits. We completed 248 inspections, and it was about $1.4 million in construction value. And that's all that I have.
Also, we have ribbon cutting. P-Track, the chiropractor up in 31st Street, 4 p.m. Thursday, if anyone's available. I know the chamber's going to be there. Yeah, right down from Crown Trophy and La Vida Massage. So, kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I'm good with that. So, anyway. All right, I guess I'm up. Okay, what Greg mentioned was, I was asked, I'm part of the environmental committee of the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, and since the village of Westchester's, since 2012, has been collecting drugs, and kudos to Greg, he's our sorter, separator, for a number of years. We've collected more drugs to keep them out of the drains than anybody combined, forever. And part of one of the meetings we had in Lombard was the Cook County board had followed an Alameda County, California ordinance that is designed to require collection sites throughout the county. Presently, Sheriff Dart has about 88, I think, that they said, and they have another 50 coming online, and they want to make the companies responsible for their drugs. We all know the opioid issue that we have. Heroin, over-medication, drugs in somebody's medicine cabinet. Kids come over, they take grandma and grandpa's drugs, and then their moms and that, and then they go to parties and they put them in a dish and somebody takes them, which is the craziest thing I've ever heard of, not even knowing what's in the dish. So with that, every day in the news you hear of a narco being injected and some lives being saved either by PD and FD, and I'm sure, I know the chief's been involved in that already, to have that available, Narcan in the fire department, but they want to get that to law enforcement as well, and I know the chief had mentioned before he was working on that as well to prevent these unintended deaths from somebody who's doing something that they shouldn't be doing, but at the other end, all life is precious, and we don't want anybody to pass away by doing something silly. Anyway, I went before the county and I kind of told them what we were doing, and I had learned early on that Walgreens had started a pilot program in 39 states that they were going to be collecting drugs and disposing them on their own. So at the hearing, there was 39 speakers testifying. I was probably the fourth or fifth one. And of course, all the drug companies that were there don't want the ordinance. They would rather that you take the drugs that you don't want, put them in a plastic bag, put some water in them, put some coffee grounds in them, zip them up and throw them in the garbage. That's their plan. That's their educational piece. Or kitty litter. Well, if you don't drink coffee and you don't have kitty, you don't have the litter, A, what are you going to do with it? Secondly, it's going in the landfill. There's not a landfill out there that doesn't have leachate, which leaches out into the water, getting into the water supply, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the county, in the next 6 weeks, they took all the information and they are going to come up with a county-wide plan and potentially, if it's a positive vote, require the collection of these. I indicated to them, to their non-knowledge, that Walgreens was already doing it. And I said, I asked that Westchester be a spot, however, I knew it was going to be an uphill climb because they were looking for 24-hour spots. So the one around here is going to be in Villa Park. So I certainly let the caucus know, testified positively, was thanked by Larry Suffredin, a Westchester resident that now lives in Evanston, that's on the county board, for our participation in what we do. It was very sad to hear. For those that you have had the ability to meet Chief Roberts of the Forest Preserve District, who's on 31st Street there, he lost his son to an overdose. And there was another young man who lost a daughter that took one Oxycontin for whatever reason and lost her life. So these are the things that we're trying to prevent. I said we are going to collect as much as we can whenever we can. We've been doing it since 2012, really without issue, really without any expense. The DEA's taken part of that. And I encourage them to forget about what the drug companies say, because they're another big business conglomerate, billions of dollars. It would have probably cost them a penny to collect anything. And I made the analogy that we collect tires, and people pay a fee to get rid of the tires off their cars, but we can't get drugs that have a health component, illegal usage, and it's in our water supply that's not tested. They found estrogen and everything else in fish in the north branch of the areas up there. So guess what? They don't test for all that. They test for coliform and that kind of, feces and things of that nature.
If that ordinance is successful, what would that require? So each town would have to do?
What they're looking to do is having one site available for 20,000 geographic people. We're in the white zone, not particularly us, but it's us in LaGrange Park, I think, in this area that collect. And Danny modeled his after me and what we do here. But in the city of Chicago, other than at the courthouses and things where the county is, there's very few spots. So they're targeting the county. We are not gonna have to do anything. We're gonna collect like we collect. I mean, if, Walgreens in Villa Park is going to take it, I'm sure we can drop it off there. I'm not so sure that if as long as DEA is doing it, I think we should collect here for our people. And, we'll figure out what to do with it as long as it's done. But it's keeping out of the waterway. I mean, one of our collections was almost 1,000 pounds of just pills, because we separate it out of the bottles, we take the cardboard out, and I said the troubling thing is the amount of needles that people flip in there. I have to say the majority have caps on them. I think Greg would agree. But I know when we're in there sorting that kind of stuff, and predominantly Greg, because I'm not sure when he does it, he doesn't tell me anymore. But there are needles and things of that nature, and we recycle the pill bottles, and we recycle the cardboard, and we recycle 3 different things. So when we give somebody pills, it's pills. It's not somebody's pill vial. So anyway, that program is going. He mentioned about the air quality as part of the caucus. They sent me some information that due to the hot days that we've had and the air quality out there, they asked if we wouldn't mind putting an extra link for an information on our website, which we did. So as we get these requests from the caucus, which we are part of, just like we're part of WCMC, if we can do this for the education of the populace that are visiting our website, those are positive things that are out there. So as that happens, and again, if you guys have anything that comes in your direction that we need to explore or add on a website, I mean, do not hesitate. So anyway, that's pretty much all I got. Jess, anything you need? No? Okay, is there an exec piece, Janet?
I have nothing.
Nothing? Okay. All right, so if no one has any exec, is there a motion, a second to adjourn our board meeting?
So moved. Second.
Nick and Frank, right?
Frank and Nick.
Nick and
Nick
Frank.
and Frank and Nick. whatever.
All those in favor of adjourning our board meeting say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition say no. We stand adjourned at, what's that, 9:10?